Hi there, and welcome back to the Huddle. Today we're with KPMG US gaming leader Rick Arpin. How are you today, Rick?
Good, Kurt. Thanks for having us here.
Of course, yeah, and thank you for participating in our Global Gaming Awards for the first time here in Las Vegas. How do you believe that show went, and what were some of the highlights for you?
Well, I think for me, the show, first of all, you all do a great job with that program from sort of beginning to end, right, including the actual event itself. So for me, the event was great. Early in the show, you see a lot of faces, you know, reconnecting with folks. But I think for me, it's when you look through that short list and when you see the award winners, the depth and breadth of what this industry has to offer, the quality of product, the quality of company, and then I love that the leader is the last category. The quality of people in this industry is, I think, something we maybe don't celebrate enough. So I think we're happy to be a part of that process to celebrate that.
Of course, it's certainly a wonderful celebration. It brings together the very best of the gaming industry, I feel. Speaking on KPMG, how do those services kind of cross over into the gaming industry?
Yeah, so for us as a U.S. gaming practice, we serve clients sort of across the spectrum in a couple different ways. One, we serve folks in all the different sectors of the industry, so land-based operators, tribal, online operators, suppliers, racing, lottery, kind of you name it. And then from a geographic perspective, obviously sort of all through the country at this point with the way gaming's expanded. And then we coordinate globally when needed for our global clients. And then from a service perspective, certainly core audit, tax services are our bread and butter of any firm like ours. Where we've seen our strengths beyond that have been in transaction work. This industry goes through cycles of consolidation, deconsolidation, obviously new products, all sorts of things that drive transactions, private equity interest in the industry. And so we help companies throughout that life cycle, maybe upfront thinking about how to approach M&A, doing diligence on deals, and then maybe integrating the two companies after the fact. So that's a big one. And then we've recently, certainly the last few years, I think, seen a pickup in cybersecurity and IT services. The industry has been generally a little bit behind in things like cloud adoption, that sort of thing. There's regulatory reasons for that. There's other reasons for that, but we're finally seeing sort of a pickup in that. And then most recently, of course, you can't ignore AI and automation, where we're starting to do work for clients in that space.
Absolutely. I'm kind of glad you brought up AI and all of KPMG services, because as someone who can take kind of a broad view of the industry, where do you see it evolving in terms of AI, prediction markets, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's just sort of what, I mean, it was one guy's opinion, and you've got to, I think one of the things we've been doing around this show and certainly recent conferences and other meetings with clients is trying to just get as many broad perspectives as possible. I think there's really no bad opinions or wrong answers when it comes to these things. I'll sort of take them in part, right? AI and automation may be a little bit easier to get our head around, as scary as that is, given the transformative nature of the technology. I think the way we see it is, it's definitely a value driver that will be around. Like 3 years ago, I guess we were all in a froth about metaverse. We don't talk about metaverse anymore. I don't think that's going to happen with AI. I think the idea of automation to make us more effective in communicating with our customers, in complying with our regulations, and in getting our books and records right on the back end, that's really powerful. We should be doing that with any tool we can. And of course, AI can drive a significant efficiency in some of those areas. So there's a long way to go, I think. There's a long runway here. We're just in the early stages of it, but we do think it's here to last. And the way we approach it, frankly, is thinking about it as a newer technology. Like, let's try a lot of different things. Let's learn. Sort of consider ourselves a little bit of a lab here. We don't have to sort of assume we know everything and have a 5-year strategy for this thing. We can start dabbling and doing some work for even within a company. If you think about just the user base, getting comfortable with a new technology, those little pilots and use cases will be super helpful there. To your other question on prediction markets, or just call it any form, I guess, in these days of emerging gaming, I think it would be silly, I think, for companies to certainly put their head in the sand and hope it just goes away, right? I think the key is going to be how do you position yourself in these spaces? There's a few different ways to do that in the prediction market space. There's probably a few different ways to do that with daily fantasy plus or peer-to-peer or sweepstakes, all those sorts of things. My general sense is that these things will get resolved in most cases through our existing sort of regulatory structures, meaning Daily Fantasy went through this obviously a couple different times now, where they sort of push the envelope, they get pushed back on, and eventually we sort of bring them into the fold and get them into the regulated environment, or they build products that are clearly sort of on the other side of the fence and more entertainment based. I think that'll continue to happen with those types of products. And again, whether that tug and pull is done through legislation or legal battles or whatever, that I'm not so sure, but I think it'll get resolved. The prediction market one is really, really harder to predict because you got so many more factors in play, including the idea of a federal regulatory body, which is just not something we're used to, right? And so it's an unknown factor for us to like, how does that affect the calculus of how we're thinking? But one thing I think we've talked to folks about this week, and I think we're starting to hear a little bit is, for all these sorts of products, there is no free lunch in this world, right? It's an economic sort of theory, but I think it's true here. We've seen recent valuations in investments and valuations of some of these companies that are very lofty, right? And so they're pricing in sort of the optimal scenario, like, oh, this will all be fine, and no one will ever push back, and we'll never have to pay a tax, gaming tax, or whatever. And I think, if a prediction market thinks that they're not going to face the same pushback that maybe, the sports betting operators did a few years ago about why is every third advertisement on a Sunday for DraftKings, now it's Kalshi, pick your two names, whatever. Constituents will call their legislators. Legislators usually act on things their constituents want to hear about, and they've got a lot of other constituents in their ear about this, right? Gaming companies, their gaming regulators, right? Pennsylvania regulator just sent a note to their entire congressional delegation saying, "Hey, I think this is a problem. Can you help here?" And obviously the courts. So I just don't think it's going to be as easy or as a clean of a path as maybe the valuations are indicating. I'm not suggesting those companies think they're going to have a clear path, but markets can be frothy and bullish, right? And that's what we're seeing now. But I think there will be a bit of a reality check, maybe is the right word, in that path. I don't think it's going to be as easy as they think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I like to say that something new happens every day in this industry, and I think a lot of the time you try to play catch up, but it's also good to put and move ahead forward and take one step ahead, like you kind of mentioned. And sort of just to wrap up, what are KPMG's goals for G2E each year, especially as it celebrates its 25th anniversary in 2025?
Impressive. It's been that long, right? Well, I think we really think of it in a few buckets. One is, and maybe most important, is really we like to support the industry. We think it's important that firms like ours, the law firms, the investment banks, the sort of professional services providers to this industry really embrace the industry, right? So whether that's supporting initiatives like Responsible Gaming Education Month or being at G2E and having a presence and we have a meeting space, so we're financially contributing, I guess, to G2E, right? We think that's really important. It's great for our people. We bring a large team. They get to really absorb the industry, take that back with them to their client work. We think that's a value add. We think it makes us better at delivering our services. So that whole idea of just being present and supporting the industry is really important. And of course, on the sort of sales side, we really, it's funny, a conference like G2E for us really hits sort of every part of the sales funnel, as you might call it. We're meeting people for the first time we've never met. It's funny to think that I can walk a trade show floor like G2E and still look up and see a booth of a company I've never heard of, right? I'm supposed to know this stuff. So that's great to sort of meet new people. You never know where that's going to take us from a business perspective, but then obviously through the funnel and all the way through very strong existing clients where, just great to catch up with them, see what's going on. Maybe we haven't seen them in a month or two and just understand what's happening in their world. And in some cases, again, maybe we're doing some tax work for them, but they can now meet other professionals that we've brought to just learn the breadth of our services. So all in all, it's a busy week, but it's a fantastic week for us.
Yeah, no, it's at G2E, I like to think, brings together the very best and brightest of the gaming industry every year. And I just want to thank you again for taking the time with us today. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kurt.
Of course.